So, from an interesting research I conducted, I found out that in the past 20-something years, many different kinds of communities appeared in Israel. Especially among young people, the trend is that they want to live together instead of each renting their own apartment. Different groups that share the same values, sometimes these are religious groups or people that are simply fed up with a very intensive, competitive lifestyle. I also heard that this is a worldwide trend. And also because it's cheaper and easier. And people want support. People are drawn to their childhood. They have that tendency. It's like when we were kids, we used to sleep over at each other's house. Oh, and you too? Sure. So it's kind of the same. And in general, it's a sort of childishness which is very typical of the younger generation. Yeah, from what I read, it's funner together, we can support each other. But as Owen said, people are not that quick to give up their own privacy and their individualistic freedom. And Dr. Sarah Shadmi writes that the communal lifestyle is the new substitute for what was once patriotism, meaning that if we want to have a strong, socially united Israel, it has to be done on a local level, and the more communal lifestyle can give people meaning that the family or the country can't give, so they find it in smaller communities. And there are people that simply decide they don't want to live this way anymore and decide on creating a different reality for themselves. And I heard from many people that this is something that they're lacking, a kind of a community or a community life. Now, of course, building communes is not our direction, but still people feel that they're lacking something. So we'd like to understand what is it exactly that we're lacking and where are we headed? We started seeing this from about 50, 60, and 70 years ago with hippies and everything that started developing in Europe in the 60s, which is the beginning of today's younger generation, that today they're already grandmothers and grandfathers, but they are the ones that started uniting, living together. We have to look for the roots for it, for the reasons in human society, where after the individualistic, egoistic, capitalistic development, suddenly humanity started revealing in itself a tendency towards connection, towards a pretty modest kind of life, with some special kind of content, which is supported by a certain amount of people that agree with this idea, that it makes them feel good. There are people that say that it's very much like a kindergarten, that they're building a warm place for themselves, a nursery, in which they can live. And they feel good, they don't want to think about anything that's going on the outside. It's a commune, it's a kind of a community, but it's limited, it's small. They don't want to extend it to the size of a country or the world. They have no such tendency. But they do have a certain tendency towards being together. Besides that, the inner need that suddenly started appearing in us is a need for society. the need for society. And the younger generation, where on the one hand they're very proudful and each of them wants to show himself, and people are inclined towards acting out towards each other, but on the other hand, a person in his own community, in his own small group, he wants to be a simple person like everyone else. He doesn't want to portray anyone there, and so on. Meaning, there's a kind of a I don't know how to put it, a kind of some action against the world, that we feel good this way. We build amongst ourselves a miniature world, and for us it's good. And what you're doing out there, we're not playing that game. And there are many such communities. There are also educational communities, the purpose of which is to work in the community, to educate, to bridge the gaps, social gaps, other gaps. These are usually youth movements that live in a small community of their own, but they go into the community to work there, to help. There is such a phenomenon. To continue what Tal said, if we divide 100% of the population into those that live their own individualistic life and those that live a community life, then a very small percentage are doing all this community activity, but most of the people live their own individualistic city-style life. Now, I want to talk about the general population, where each has their own individualistic life. Now, looking forward, a few years into the future, my life as a person that lives in the city with my family, with my children, my life today is very individualistic. In a few years, will I find myself, in your opinion, more connected with other people or less connected with other people? That's the first question. I think that our life is advancing us in both opposite directions, meaning that on the one hand, you'll feel that you're more and more disconnected from the environment, and you don't care about your neighbors and your city and your country. And on the other hand, you'll feel that you're truly needy of a supporting environment that helps, that is working together with you in a mutual way, that you have the desire to be a part of something warm, supportive. Suddenly, something which is opposite to how you are, to the way you live. And these are two opposite things. In general, in nature, the scrutiny is always between two opposite directions. And we see the matter of pubs and festivals, going out. It's something much more communal, having to do with big audiences of people, much bigger than it was 50 or 60 years ago. Back then, these were really families. Each family either lived in their house or apartment or their yard. Today, however you put it, we have more organizations that are involved in community matters. We see that culture is becoming more and more of a pop culture, something aimed at the masses. So along with it, you have this tendency towards community life, to gather.